Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome everyone to Amir Shakur Speaks with your host, Amir King Seven Shakur. That's me. Today is the day where we're talking about a pretty substantial subject and critical in a lot of ways. Talking about Mr. Charlie Kirk and the recent assassination of Mr. Charlie Kirk. I just want to say, from the point of disclosure, that Mr. Kirk, Charlie Kirk, was known to many as an influencer. He was known to many as a leader in the landscape of political versus social justice, and kind of a mixture of in between. Um, Definitely want to break this down, and we'll throw about disclaimers because the assassination was something that's a tragic thing, and anytime someone's life is lost in the midst of expressing their opinion, and people are not or don't learn how to be disagreeable without being violently disagreeable, to say the least, then it becomes a tragedy. It's a loss for all of us in America when these things happen, and we've seen it time and time again. So, with that being said, I want to welcome you to Amir Shakur Speaks, which brings the best of politics, information, faith, all done from an urban inspirational perspective. And today, our show is sponsored by Black America World News and the Chicago Urban Daily, also the Amir Shakur Speaks broadcasting channel. If you're joining us for the first time, drop your questions in the chat, and we love to answer them, and we love to hear from you. Also, just show some love and like and subscribe to the channel, please. Everyone, my friends in the chat world, welcome all. And yes, I want to make sure that we're talking about this subject with sincerity. Um, Non-opinionated, but I mean, you can definitely feel free to give your opinion, but in the most non-biased standpoint. We want to stay away from that, but we want to talk to the heart of the matter. So this is a critique-free zone. I also want to say, when we're talking about these subjects, I just want to make sure we put everything in order. So um, let's talk a little bit about Mr. Kirk here, Charlie Kirk. So Charlie Kirk, as I said, was an American activist, better known as the founder of Turning Point USA. And some of the things that Charlie endeavored in, some of the things that he participated in, well, he was very well known in conservative circles. Um, as one of the leading pundits, I should say. Um, Charlie James Kirk was a native of Chicago. He was an American conservative political activist. Like I said, he was an author, media personality, and again, Turning Point USA was a very well-renowned conservative forum, which a lot of times the conservative presidential candidates would actually go down and format and frequent. Um, he was the executive director, by the way. He was also responsible for Turning Point Action, which many believe was the action based format of Turning Point USA. Um, in later years, he was one of the most prominent voices on the mega movement in the Republican Party. Mega, Make American Great Again, the movement that was founded by Donald Trump. So, as I said, Charlie Kirk was born and raised in Chicago, and the northwest suburbs of Arlington Heights and Prospect Heights. He attended college for a small bit of time, Harper College, but he decided to produce the events in the forms that we are discussing now. TPUSA is what it's abbreviated for short, and he developed several affiliate groups from that, from religious communities, conservative issues, and discussing everything in between. He also hosted the Charlie Kirk Show. It was a conservative talk radio program that was syndicated in certain markets throughout the country. So, as we're talking about Charlie Kirk, I just want to go ahead and really talk about things. And let's start off from the standpoint of the September 10th, 2025 event where Charlie was shot and killed during while speaking at a TPSA, Turning Point USA, I should say, debate event at the Utah University, Utah Valley University to be specific. And just wanted to share a little bit about that in order to just bring a little bit of clarity. And let me just share that, and then I guess we can start from there.
Of 2 Charlie Kirk is over after President Donald Trump announced the person who fatally shot conservative activist and father of 2 Charlie Kirk is over after President Donald Trump announced the suspect is in custody. 31-year-old Kirk was the founder of the conservative youth activist organization Turning Point USA. He was fatally wounded on Wednesday, September 10th during a campus event in Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Authorities have identified 22-year-old Tyler Robinson as a suspect who allegedly killed Kirk. Here is a timeline of how the shooting unfolded and how Robinson was arrested. According to Utah Governor Spencer Cox, suspect Tyler Robinson arrived at UVU's campus at 8:29 a.m. local time on the day of the shooting, driving a gray Dodge Challenger. Bo Mason, the commissioner for the Utah Department of Public Safety, said authorities tracked the suspect's movements onto the campus.
Through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location.
At 12:07 p.m., a crowd awaits Charlie Kirk at UVU, the first stop on Turning Point USA's The American Comeback Tour. Supporters start chanting Kirk's name ahead of his appearance. Around 12:09, Kirk makes his appearance and throws hats out into the crowd of about 3,000 people.
All right, we're gonna get started, everybody. You know how it works.
12:11 p.m. Kirk begins speaking, opening debate and answering questions from individuals in the crowd. At 12:23 p.m., Kirk is hit with a single shot to the neck, appearing to come from an elevated position on a nearby rooftop. Video shows Kirk being carried by 6 men to an SUV, which transports him to Timpanogos Regional Hospital. According to authorities, immediately following the shooting, the subject moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled campus into a nearby neighborhood. At 12:52 p.m., UVU sent out an alert that police are investigating and that a suspect is in custody. The person of interest is released after questioning. At 2:22 p.m., the Orem Police Department said the shooting suspect was not in custody and is still at large. At 2:40 p.m., President Donald Trump announces in a post on Truth Social that Charlie Kirk has died from his injuries, writing, quote, "No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie." At 4 p.m., Utah Governor Spencer Cox clarifies during a press conference that there is a person of interest in custody who is being questioned.
To whoever did this, we will find you.
At 4:21 p.m., FBI Director Kash Patel writes in a post on X that the subject, quote, "for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk, is in custody." Authorities later say the person of interest was not the shooting suspect and was released after questioning. At 7 a.m. on Thursday, September 11th, FBI Special Agent in Charge Robert Bowles announces during a press conference that authorities have recovered what is believed to be the weapon used in the shooting, a high-powered bolt-action rifle. At 9:56 a.m., authorities released images of the suspected shooter, asking for the public's help in identifying them. The FBI writes in a post on X that it is offering a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to the identification and the arrest of the individual responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk. At 6 a.m. Mountain Time on Friday, September 12th, President Donald Trump announced on Fox and Friends in New York that a person is in custody.
As I'm walking in, they said, looking real good. They have the person that they wanted.
At 8 a.m., Utah Governor Spencer Cox said at a press conference that Tyler Robinson, a Utah native, was identified as the person who shot and killed Kirk.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him.
He was taken into custody in St. George, Utah, on Friday. Cox said that after Robinson's father recognized his son in the distributed photographs, he told Robinson to turn himself in. Robinson initially said no, but later changed his mind, officials said. The father then called a youth pastor, who is also a U.S. Marshals Task Force officer. The officer advised the father to have Robinson stay in place. This information was then conveyed to the FBI.
I'm grateful that at this moment we have an opportunity to bring closure to this very dark chapter in our nation's history.
So if you're just joining us, and welcome Brian. So if you're just joining us, we're here talking about the legacy of Charlie Kirk and everything that he was, or what he was. And I think that it's worthy of to restate the statement that we don't take assassinations very lightly. People have to learn how to be disagreeable without being violently disagreeable. And when situations degenerate to the point of violence, then it does everyone an injustice, everyone in our community, people abroad. So going back to discussing a little bit more about Charlie and his background, the timeline was very warranted. And we were discussing just basically some of the general the information as far as Charlie's origin and his biograph story from someone who was just a college dropout to becoming one of the leading conservative voices in the United States of America. And it is a success story of America in a lot of ways, and definitely that's very warranted. I definitely want to say until his death, Kirk hosted, as I had stated, a 3-hour radio talk show, the Charlie Kirk Show, and that was on Salem's Media, The Answer Radio. And according to internal data from Turning Point USA, Kirk's podcast was very well known, between 500,000 to 7,500,000 times each day. So, it was definitely frequented. Like I said, he had become one of the number one voices on the conservative circuit in America. His Turning Point Live was also a 3-hour streaming talk show aimed at Generation Z. TP USA, short for Turning Point USA, the monthly online average grew to 110,000 or 111,000 unique views, with February being this past February being one of the pinnacle layers of growth in his broadcast and podcast career. In February 23, also during the height of his growth, a research study was done at the Brookings Institution, and it's found that Kirk's podcast contained the highest proportion of false and misleading, unsubstantiated statements among the 37,000 episodes. What were some of the controversial things that were said? What were some of the controversial statements that were made? Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because we really have to break down the person himself, the legacy, and his statements. So, if you wanted to really get down to the heart of the matter, several episodes of Kirk's podcast, Kirk called for the Patriot bailout of a man who broke into Nancy Pelosi's house, and he was attacked and he was tried, and he attempted to murder Nancy Pelosi's husband with a hammer. Pelosi's husband was hospitalized. Well, Kirk was one of the voices leading for that person to be released and let go and exonerated of charges. In 2022, I should say, it was alleged that Twitter began censoring conservative voices, and Charlie's voice stood out as one not to amplify because of the attack on Pelosi and some of the other things that were coming out of the mega universe at that time. In April 2024, Kirk created a TikTok account after previously expressing skepticism of social media platforms of other conservative pundits. His account gained popularity because he posted numerous videos of himself talking to college students on campus tours, and that was one of the things that Turning Point USA actually did. They talked to college students on campus tours with as many as 50 million views. In February 2025, Kirk signed with Trinity Broadcasting Network to host the weekday talk show host, the Charlie Kirk Today Show, which was on Trinity Broadcasting. Let's take a look at Turning Point USA, his Turning Point USA segments, just to kind of get a little bit of clarity. And there is a level of outspokenness, so I just want to bring that to the level of attention. So this was Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA event, an event where he was talking and discussing Black issues with the Black students. So definitely want your opinion about this.
Hello, my name is Malcolm, and I guess my question to you today is, when did systemic racism end, and what is your definition of systemic racism?
Systemic racism is a law on the books that prohibits an individual from doing something based on their race. It largely ended with the Equal Rights Amendment and the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s.
Okay, and so do you think that it just ended right then and there, and there's no lingering effects of that could, kind of explain some of the disparities we see today, or no?
If the hypothesis of lingering intergenerational 60-plus year effects are true, then you must tell me how Jews have done so materially well post-Holocaust, despite everything being taken from them.
Well, I don't think that's a one-to-one
You're right, Jews had it much worse than blacks.
Well, I think that also
have Black Americans ever had a crazy fanatical dictator trying to kill half their population in a span of 5 years?
We have been enslaved for hundreds
No, that's
of
not
years.
the question. I'm saying Jews actually had it far worse than Black Americans did in the 1930s and 40s. Way worse.
But do we have to look at Jews as how we should, Black people should just
No, I'm
be
saying
the
you have to
same,
prove
or?
the argument that it applies to other groups. So your argument is that things pass down through generations, right? That there's aftershocks, there's a ripple effect. We discount that as very minimal at best. So you have to show me another minority group that has suffered that it held them back.
So for Black people to have, or for the 60-plus, disparity to be true, you have to see that in another group.
Well, yeah, because then it's a rule, right? So the rule should apply to other groups that had other types of suffering.
But the way Black people were treated in America isn't the same as any other group.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
Asians were put in internment camps actually in the 1930s and 40s.
Well, yeah, they
Again,
were.
and Jews came with no money in the 40s or 50s after.
And that hurt their communities.
Right, but then they were able to overcome it. So how is it that Asians are super wealthy now?
They were put in internment camps and then let out of camps.
Yeah,
and then,
but for 2 or 3 years, some Asians and Chinese and Japanese were in internment camps with no ability to own property, run business. I mean, it was terrible. Every group has gone through some period or form of suffering. And let me ask you a question. Do you think that the material bad status of Black America right now has anything to do with decisions that Black Americans have made?
I think that while it may have, that might be part of the reason, I think that there has been a push for Black Americans to make that choice.
I don't understand what you mean.
I would say take the war on drugs, for example. I would think that is a way that Black and white people were using drugs at similar rates, but Black people were punished for it more severely and given longer sentences.
Okay, none of that is correct, but that's fine.
Well,
so
it is.
It's based on income, not based on race. But again,
those are pretty much the same thing.
Again, I always find the war on drugs argument so laughable. You don't want to go to jail for doing cocaine, don't do cocaine. I don't understand the argument. It's not that hard. It's not complex stuff, right? It's as if so the argument is that a bunch of Black people were doing cocaine and they caught us and we're the problem.
Well, they were given longer sentences than white people,
Again,
even though white people did the same drugs at the same
hotly
rate.
and highly debated, but it still is.
It's not.
Well, again,
I've heard it from a lot of sources.
If you distill it down based on the quality of attorney they had, based on their income level, it just so happens a lot of Black Americans had a lower income level.
Well, you gotta think, why is that though? And
So before we delve any further into the the specifics about what Charlie Kirk was and what he wasn't, I think that we have to be very specific about how we approach this subject in lieu of the recent assassination. So if you're just joining us today, we're talking about the truth of Charlie Kirk and what he was versus what he wasn't, and was he an American hero? This stream is not meant to be an indictment of Kirk, but it is meant to bring transparency and clarification to some of the issues. And not only is this an issue involving Kirk, but it's an issue involving the climate of hate and the climate of discontent that America's in right now. And Kirk is a proxy, or excuse me, Kirk is a proxy of it. So let's go back and with Kirk, and let's talk a little bit more about the politicalness of his agenda with Turning Point USA. So, as I had stated before, Charlie was a main pundit in the conservative movement, roughly a mega sweetheart, if I were to say the least. And even with that, Kirk had voiced a belief in a lot of the mega talking points, and he was basically carrying a lot of those talking points to heart. So, for an example, Kirk said at a TPUSA, which is Turning Point USA event, um, that single motherhood in Chicago's Black community was a cause of gun violence, blaming the absence of a father in from some of the Black households as a broken culture. And he also praised Martin Luther King Jr. prior to December 2023, at the same time calling Dr. King a person who was admired, but it was one who he didn't actually believe in. This speech also drew large condemnation, as Kirk condemned the Civil Rights Act of 1964, calling the passage a huge mistake, alleging that it had created a permanent DEI type of bureaucracy. Kirk also called the legal apparatus of the Civil Rights Act an anti-white weapon. Kirk told the New York Times, and this is a direct quote, "I take Cardwellian views on this uh, from the book of the Age of Enlightenment that he went through, a new founding of the 60s and Civil Rights Act as a superseded document to the U.S. Constitution, meaning in reference point. I bet if you polled Americans, most of them would have more reverence for the Civil Rights Act than the Constitution. I could be wrong, but I'm right. In November of 2021, in a Fox News article, Kirk wrote that he believed the state power should be used to stop teachers from instructing children on critical race theory. What is critical race theory? Well, critical race theory is a conceptual framework developed to understand, or it's a foundation developed to understand the basis of relationships between social conceptions of race and social and political views, mass media, and ethnicity. So CRT is basically what it stands for. Critical race theory is CRT is the abbreviation of critical race theory. It also considers racism to be systematic in the views of laws and rules, and not based upon people's prejudice, or racial prejudice. CRT is also used in sociology to explain social, political, and legal structures and how the power is distributed, through the lens of focusing on the concept of race, resident experiences of racism. Here's an example of CRT framework that exists. Say for instance, if there is a rate of incarceration, and the rate of incarceration may be higher in the Black community than anything. Well, a key CRT concept is that basically it's saying that there's no biological basis or doesn't promote the racial aspect of it in the Black community, which may have led to a higher form of incarceration or the Latino community. But it says that these people are of their own construct, and they have made their own bed and they want to lie in it. So, and if they want to change the situation, change the format, then they have to change their own mindset. And there is no other biological basis, or there's no racial profiling or racial prejudice that exists, but it's just a construct of someone's creative mind. So CRT proponents believe it in things like no DEI. They believe in anti-woke theories. What is anti-woke theories? Well, anti-woke theories is basically a statement that says that, these set of beliefs, principles, things that are pertinent to communities of color, not just Black communities, but communities of color, are really not rooted in American history, but they are negative things. So majority of a lot of conservative America does believe in anti-woke and being anti-woke, right? The term woke evolved dramatically over the past century, but you've seen it over the course of the last several years, moving from a phase that was used in the Black community to address the awareness of racial and prejudice. For decades, the term woke was a rallying cry, like "Stay woke," and that was used in African American vernacular. In the early 20th century, the settlement or the sentiment was found in Black nationalist movements. Stay woke. The American the Nation of Islam or the American Islamic movement, Stay Woke, the Black militant movement, Stay Woke, was used there. So um, in Charlie Kirk's world, these things were definitely profoundly negative and mimicked to be not positive and outside of constitutional beliefs. So, just to break it down a little bit further, I definitely want to ensure that when we're discussing these things, because they're complex issues, I can definitely say for a fact that Charlie Kirk is someone who was revered again in the mega world, as well as by the president of the United States as a leading proponent. As a matter of fact, I just want to share a statement and read a statement that was released by the White House upon the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Let me read that. I think it's a great segue. On September 10th, 2025, the White House released this statement in reference to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. As a mark of respect for the memory of Charlie Kirk, by the authority vested in me as the President of the United States by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby order the flag of the United States should be flown at half staff at the White House and upon public buildings and all grounds, at all military posts, naval stations, naval vessels, in the federal government, excuse me, in the District of Columbia and throughout the United States and the territories. From sunset, September 14, 2025, I also direct that the flag should be flown at half staff for the same length of time at the United States embassies, litigations, consular offices, and other facilities abroad, including all military facilities, naval vessels and stations, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand this 10th day of September in the year of our Lord 2025, and of the independence of the Independent States of America in the 225th. Donald J. Trump. So that was a statement that was released in reference to the death of to honor the legacy of Charlie Kirk, and Yes. So, so what's your opinion? I definitely want to go, and I definitely want to please discuss some of the things and how you guys feel about the life of Charlie Kirk. Um, One of the questions, thank you for this question, Beth. How do Jews from the 1940s compare to blacks in 2025? Well, there is a there is not a major comparison. I mean, I guess you can draw a contrast. I would have to really think in the level of maybe prior to 2025 and say that the Jewish movement in the 1940s and the African American movement during that period, during the Jim Crow era and the prior to civil rights, I think that there would be a better contrast because of the lack of the civil rights issues in the Jim Crow America would be a little bit more of a better comparison than to blacks in 2025. If there was a comparison that was made, it was to me it would probably be a stretch in any way from any point. Racism against racism against blacks still exists. It is often covert. Yes, I so agree. I so agree. I want to talk a little bit about the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the person who assassinated Charlie. Just to kind of talk about Tyler Robinson. So Tyler Robinson, as we watched the timeline, was a young man, and he was the suspect in the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk. And he is in custody on a murder charge while the conservative influencer's widow spoke about her husband's killing for the first time on Friday, vowing to continue his mission. The shooter was identified as 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, uh, according to the Utah authorities and also the governor, Governor Cox. Robinson was arrested after a relative contacted a family friend who told authorities that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident. Authorities said that they tried to reach him, but not were not successful early on. And after his family was interviewed, family and friends and surveillance video, they, the news went down to the community and talked to neighbors. One neighbor made a statement. I don't know why he would do that. Three doors down from the house, the neighbor where Robinson grew up, uh, Christian Swingerman, was finding it hard to reconcile that the young man she thought she knew was someone who was involved in a shooting such as this. He wasn't that kind of kid, said Swingerman, 66. He was raised in a neighborhood with good people, good family, and I just don't trust uh, what we're hearing about that. So, and Kathleen Swingerman's point, and everyone who was in the community, they a lot of times when these things happen, a lot of times these activities, especially the individuals who perpetrate these things, they do them covertly, for lack of a better use of the word. They don't make it announced. So I could definitely see how someone who you would think to be one way maybe changed. There was a change in his life. There was a change that made him commit this tragic murder, to say the least. Um, so, how do you feel? What are the things you would say about Charlie Kirk, and what is your feelings? Is he an American hero? Is he an American hero? I think we want to talk a little bit more about the climate of hate, and I think we want to address it from that standpoint as well. So, if we were to really talk about the mega movement and mega society in its entirety, I think it would provide a little bit more light on how many people feel, and most people feel, about the legacy of Charlie Kirk. I do want to go to another news article about hate mongering, and I think it's warranted to talk about the climate of hate and this is a debate from ABC News. So let's share that.
Person
I'm sorry, we'll go back to the timeline one more time, and then we'll go to the second
who
video.
fatally shot conservative activist and father of two Charlie Kirk is over after President Donald Trump announced the suspect is in custody. 31-year-old Kirk was the founder of the conservative youth activist organization Turning Point USA. He was fatally wounded on Wednesday, September 10th during a campus event in Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Authorities have identified 22-year-old Tyler Robinson as a suspect who allegedly killed Kirk. Here is a timeline of how the shooting unfolded and how Robinson was arrested. According to Utah Governor Spencer Cox, suspect Tyler Robinson arrived at UVU's campus at 8:29 a.m. local time on the day of the shooting, driving a gray Dodge Challenger. Bo Mason, the commissioner for the Utah Department of Public Safety, said authorities tracked the suspect's movements onto the campus.
Through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location.
At 12:07 p.m., a crowd awaits Charlie Kirk at UVU, the first stop on Turning Point USA's The American Comeback Tour. Supporters start chanting Kirk's name ahead of his appearance. Around 12:09, Kirk makes his appearance and throws hats out into the crowd of about 3,000 people.
All right, we're going to get started, everybody. You know how it works.
12:11 p.m., Kirk begins speaking, opening debate and answering questions from individuals in the crowd. At 12:23 p.m., Kirk is hit with a single shot to the neck, appearing to come from an elevated position on a nearby rooftop. Video shows Kirk being carried by 6 men to an SUV, which transports him to Timpanogos Regional Hospital. According to authorities, immediately following the shooting, the subject moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled campus into a nearby neighborhood. At 12:52 p.m., UVU sent out an alert that police are investigating and that a suspect is in custody. The person of interest is released after questioning. At 2:22 p.m., the Orem Police Department said the shooting suspect was not in custody and is still at large. At 2:40 p.m., President Donald Trump announces in a post on Truth Social that Charlie Kirk has died from his injuries, writing, quote, "No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie." At 4 p.m., Utah Governor Spencer Cox clarifies during a press conference that there is a person of interest in custody who is being questioned.
To whoever did this, we will find you.
At 4:21 p.m., FBI Director Kash Patel writes in a post on X that the subject, quote, "for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk, is in custody." Authorities later say the person of interest was not the shooting suspect and was released after questioning. At 7 a.m. on Thursday, September 11th, FBI Special Agent in Charge, Robert Bowles, announces during a press conference that authorities have recovered what is believed to be the weapon used in the shooting, a high-powered bolt-action rifle. At 9:56 a.m., authorities released images of the suspected shooter, asking for the public's help in identifying them. The FBI writes in a post on X that it is offering a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to the identification and the arrest of the individual responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk. At 6 a.m. Mountain Time on Friday, September 12th, President Donald Trump announced on Fox and Friends in New York that a person is in custody.
As I'm walking in, they said, looking real good. They have the person that they wanted.
At 8 a.m., Utah Governor Spencer Cox said at a press conference that Tyler Robinson, a Utah native, was identified as the person who shot and killed Kirk.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him.
He was taken into custody in St. George, Utah, on Friday. Cox said that after Robinson's father recognized his son in the distributed photographs, he told Robinson to turn himself in. Robinson initially said no, but later changed his mind, officials said. The father then called a youth pastor, who is also a U.S. Marshals Task Force officer. The officer advised the father to have Robinson stay in place. This information was then conveyed to the FBI.
I'm grateful that at this moment we have an opportunity to bring closure to this very dark chapter in our nation's history.
So I guess the question that we have to ask ourselves when we're confronted with discussing the legacy of a Charlie Kirk and people of that nature, um, is that what is the climate? What is the climate of the times which we're in? And what is leading the community to really break down and look at things from the standpoint of racial hatred. Again, when you have to disagree, but you can't without being violently disagreeable, then it becomes a whole nother scenario. And that's, I think that is the question when we are discussing these things in debate. I think we have to bring honest conversations about the climate of our community, the climate of our culture, the political landscape, the climate of hate. A climate of hate is just in the environment right now that you see widespread hostility, you see racial prejudice, you see intolerance towards certain groups that have become normalized. And I can say for a fact, and you guys, if you want to disagree with me, but it's become normalized in a post-mega world. The social and political atmosphere can encourage these hate motivated behaviors like we're seeing in the assassination of a Charlie Kirk. Do I agree with a lot of his political views? No, I don't. Do I agree with who he is and what he was? Did he make some points which I might agree with? Yeah, there were points which I can say that I might have agreed with. Do I feel like some of the things were discriminatory in nature? I do. Um, does it change the fact that did he deserve to be assassinated? No, no one deserves that level of violence. So the character of the conversation is, how do we get to this climate of hate? And when we see normalized biases, when we see unchecked prejudice, and it becomes socially acceptable, violence creating this violence, it has to be stopped. It has to be checked. When we start seeing these us versus them mentality things that we're seeing in a post mega America, this is what it's come to. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I really want I really want your opinion. So my thing is that I think that we have to really drill these conversations down. And I'm gonna go to the comments section, but before I come back to the comments, and I appreciate everyone who's joining us, I just want to go to a debate in reference to um, mongering, the hate mongering, and in light of another incident recently, and I just want to use that as a proxy to discuss where we're at. So let me share it.
They used to have for mentally ill people in terms of dealing with them. And I think the problem here is, I'm guessing the Trump administration was looking for an example. This video was quite disturbing. You have the combination of social media at the same time blowing it up, and so it creates sort of the perfect storm to point to something. Just like when Dukakis, when he was running for president, Lee Atwater took advantage of that one incident that was terrible, that was very troubling for voters once they called attention to it.
So certain people have been looking for an opportunity to find a case like this, to make a point like this. I want to play, this is Charlie Kirk, why he says this hasn't gotten a lot of attention.
A white Ukrainian refugee was murdered just because she was white. Everybody knows that, obviously. If a random white person simply walked up to and stabbed a nice, law-abiding black person for no reason, it would be an apocalyptically huge national story used to impose national sweeping political changes on the whole country. Instead, Megan Basham, no one seems to care when a white woman gets stabbed to the death.
Wow. He said white a lot.
Well, we are talking about it here on ABC, so I guess
True.
I mean, I don't think that's fair. Look, being in the system, because I have represented people who are mentally ill, and here's the balance. The balance is taking away people's freedom versus evaluating their mental illness. And New York City, there are a lot of programs for people who are mentally ill, but they have to want to be there.
Yeah, and it's
about
difficult
forcing
because
them to be there.
when you are mentally ill, you have a hard time knowing that you are mentally ill. But also, I mean, people like Charlie Kirk, Van, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game, and it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
You know, let me just say a couple of things. One is, I mean, what happened to that young woman was horrible. And it's everybody's nightmare. If you're in any public space, subway, whatever, that something bad's gonna happen to you or somebody you care about. So it does strike a chord. We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering, it's wrong. Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there would be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass. Even when you had a white police officer murder a black man on live television, the whole world saw, there were no sweeping changes. In fact, not one law was passed at the federal level. So I think that's an important thing to point out. The other thing is, you mentioned the thing about cashless bail. I think this is a big challenge that we have. Would you have felt better if there had been cash bail and the mom had come and put down $1,000 to let him out? It's not about cashless bail or no cashless bail. It's about the fact that we don't know how to deal with people who are hurting in the way this man was hurting. Hurt people hurt people. What happened was horrible, but it becomes an opportunity for people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him. What people mention is the horror of what happened to this young woman.
So let's just go to some of the comments. Go back to some of the comments, guys. I just want to be. I don't want to be biased in my conversation. I really want you guys' input. If you are just joining us, we're talking about Charlie Kirk and the truth about Charlie Kirk, and also the climate of the state of our American justice, and how someone's life can be taken so easily, whether it's a conservative pundit, if it's a liberal pundit. It's just tragic to see the level of violence that's going on with political discord. Some of the comments from the comments section, and welcome everybody who's just joining. I'm going to just tell you, there was one person that mopped the floor with Charlie Kirk, and that's Rashad Ritchie. Yeah, maybe we can go ahead and see that, Javar, and welcome. Status quo is Beth McBride. There is hate out there. Yes, it is. And it's a factor in what we're dealing with. Racial hatred was an ideological crime. IMHO at Amir Shakur Speaks broadcast channel. Status, I need you to break that question down, or was that your statement? Or feel free to join me, but I definitely would love to talk to you a little bit more. Racial hatred, it was an ideological crime. I want you to be a little bit more specific about that, please. And it sounds intriguing enough, but I definitely need I definitely want to come back to you too. Hello, Javar. So agreed, the light rail murder was a racial hatred crime. Thank you, Status. And even the murder of Charlie Kirk was a racially motivated hate crime. And again, so when we're discussing the climate of hate, there is an incitement by leaders, political leaders, public figures right now. And I believe, this is my opinion, and I just want you guys to tell me how you feel about it, that contributes to the climate by amplifying these things, not to incite people to hate, but things that might lead closer to the level of hatred, the disrespect that we're seeing for one another, promoting conspiracy theories like COVID didn't exist. One thing that Charlie Kirk said was that the George Floyd case was a hoax. He promoted the George Floyd case was a hoax. Or not just Charlie Kirk, but maybe a lot of folks on the within the mega movement making inflammatory remarks. Historically, these things have often increased during election cycles. You know, when we're seeing politics and the politicians come around during election cycles and these debates, you see this incitement and it starts growing. You see the widespread disinformation. Social media and other platforms fail to curb the hate speech and the misinformation, but they always heighten it and feel it and feel negative stereotypes and hostility. What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the level of racial hate? What do you think about the disrespect that leads to dehumanizing folks and portraying targeted groups as less than human? Can make these things happen. And in Charlie Kirk's assassination, very tragic incident to say it nonetheless. But are we seeing the climate of the rhetoric that desensitizes the public to form cruel acts and hateful acts? It just makes these things seem more justifiable. I think that we have to be able to deal with these things, right? So going back to some more of the comments, we as a people, Ramona, we as a people may not other people's view, may not other people's view, and you may knock other people's view, but we as mature adults should try to understand that another person's view without racist statements, a loss of life is terrible, is a terrible crime because of hate. Yes, we can knock other people's views, Ramona. I agree with you. But we definitely, as mature people living in society, have to be the voices of conscience. We have to be able to stand up and we have to be able to say when enough is enough. We have to be able to say when people can really put aside indifferences and be able to talk about these things again without being violently disagreeable, without being prone to hate. Do you guys remember? Do you guys remember the first Trump campaign when people were coming to the rallies and he was said, hey, if you kick their butts, I'm going to see if I can find that post. If you kick their butts, then I am going to pay for your arrest. I'm going to pay for you to get out of jail or pay for your legal defense. So give me 1 second and I'm going to bring you in, Beth, and welcome. How are you?
Doing fine.
Good. Give me 1 second. Let's get through a couple more of the statements, and then I'll let you have at it. So Charlie
All
Kirk
right.
was an ideological murder status. I think that in a lot of ways, a lot of the things that we're discussing, and if you mean what I mean by saying ideological, meaning that the climate of hate has led to this murder. If you're meaning that, then let me know, because I definitely think that I would agree with you on that basis. What do you think, Beth? And welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. Um, I, I tend sometimes to be more conservative, but I've been very disappointed with what's been happening in Washington, D.C. And with what President Trump has been doing. I've been very disappointed with a lot of what's been happening. And for me, the mega movement is so far to the right. It's not even, it doesn't bring people together as a country. And when I go out, in life and I deal with people, there's a lot of tension with people and a lot of hatred out there. And today we had a meeting and there was a lady that came in the meeting and she was making public comments at the meeting about another lady. And it was a beef that they had that wasn't even about our community. And so there is a lot of hatred out there and a lot of people are dismayed. And so that was an issue where I left the meeting early because I know who those people are, and this is a symptom of what's going on right now, that there's a lot of, I guess people maybe are discouraged. Could that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Beth, there is a level of discouragement in the air, with dehumanization. We see the targeting of minority groups. We see the targeting of marginalized groups. Let's say the ICE campaigns that we see in the communities. And, these things we're seeing are being promoted and from our leadership in Washington, D.C., and even with the mega movement, and I don't want to make the mega movement a punching bag, but I have to speak truth that to reality. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and hate often stems from these things, and it's a byproduct when people lash out because of these things. So we see it, and we see the insecurity, and it leads people to externalize and blame others, just like in the meeting that you're discussing. And in some cases, there's other things that happen, like economic hardship, Beth. Unemployment rates have linked so far high. And, in far right ideologies like hate crimes, certain groups are made scapegoats for societal problems. We can always blame our neighbor for problems that exist, but is it really fair to do that?
No, it's not. And um, as I drive through the city of Chicago, I see the South Side. And when I see the South Side, what I see is a lot of entrenched poverty. And so those things affect people. And the reason why the people on the South Side, especially the blacks on the South Side, they are facing racism, which is covert, and they don't have the opportunities that they should have, especially educationally. The educational system in Chicago is leaving people without the ability to really do well in the 21st century. It's a mess.
Yes. Yes, and I will say that again, there's so much going on in the nature of our country that a lot of times, there's fear and uncertainty, right? There's lack
Right.
of security, there's economic anxiety, Beth. There's, lack of education or even an attack on education from the Trump's conspiracy theorists. They're taking the CRT, which is taking a lot of critical race theory, I should say, which is taking a lot of books that would be educational books out of libraries. I mean, we haven't seen any. I can say in my lifetime, I haven't seen anything like this. And, there is a growing influence of hate groups. And though they commit a relatively small percentage of the crimes in America to date, organized hate groups can radicalize these individuals and influence them. And now we're seeing the level of trauma. We're seeing the level of people who feel an urgency to get out and do things like we're seeing today. I mean, in the past, if someone can do a research study or pull up the stats, how many assassinations have happened in the past 10 years versus any time before in U.S. history? I think I want to see if we can find that information, Beth, because I think that again, the the climate right now is really where it's at, and
It is a climate. It is a climate. And we have a country where even if you're poor in this country, if you have air conditioning and a refrigerator and, a furnace and you have a bathroom, these are and food every day. These are things that many people in the world do not have. And so irregardless of your background or your race, whether you're black or white, we have so much in our country that is available to all of us. And we all should work together, irregardless of background or race here in this country. But there is a lot of tension.
yeah, yeah, and if you were to watch the assassination, um, of this young man, and I don't want to show the video, but if you were to see that, I mean, during his discourse in talking to the students, because his thing was talking to students, during his discourse, he literally was talking about to a black student. He was expressing his opinion about what's plaguing the black community versus how they should be engaging in a level of society. And again, these are controversial subjects. So I mean, the whole legacy of Mr. Kirk was controversy. I want to share, if you don't mind staying, you're welcome to stay. I'm going to share a little bit more of the video of Charlie Kirk and discussing CRT and some of the anti-woke things to this black student. I believe.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. I'll stay quiet in the background.
Oh no, you're welcome. 1 second.
Yes.
I think
Right, so-
there's a reason that's the case.
And just so
and
we're
I think
clear,
that's a systemic reason.
the war on drugs was insanely popular with black leaders back in the 1980s because black communities were actually being ravaged by drugs. There's a reason why we launched it.
Well, why were they were put in there in the first place?
So the government put a bunch of cocaine in the inner city?
Into the inner cities, that's true.
No.
I believe that is true.
That's not true.
Well, you don't have to. Well,
it's
you
fine.
can move on from that. then.
It's okay, but let's try to find some common ground because I don't want this to be overly combative.
Okay, I would agree. Yeah.
Would you prefer a country that prioritizes race or one that prioritizes merit?
Tired of government-run, overpriced healthcare plans? It's time to take control. Ease is a health plan for hardworking Americans, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. You get lower premiums, flexible options, and freedom from state and federal mandates. Save thousands of dollars every year on your health coverage and pay zero deductibles. Visit easeforeveryone.com/Charlie to learn more. That's easeforeveryone.com/Charlie because freedom in healthcare starts with you.
I think we should have a country that prioritizes merit, and I think we need to look at why some races are seen as less meritorious than others.
Okay, so again, just to go back to it, I can give you another example. Cubans came here with nothing. Any Cubans in the audience? Nothing, right? Nothing, right? Am I right? Nothing. Because of Castro. Like the poorest people ever to come to America would be Cubans. They're incredibly wealthy per capita now. How does it keep on happening with every other group, but black America is like seemingly always held back?
Well, I think you also have to look at, there are Cubans who move here with wealth. It's the ones who are rich enough to move.
Okay, again,
at least a lot of them are.
Again,
and I think that even the ones who do come here, with nothing, which a lot do.
But you have to, so in order for your hypothesis to be true, it needs to bear out with one other group. So there have been, what?
Wait, what do you think my hypothesis is?
Your hypothesis is one of intergenerational struggle, that what has happened 60 years ago has direct impact to the material well-being.
So I do want to stop right there, Beth, and everyone who's listening. And so what we're seeing right now is we are seeing a level of not only just misinformation. So we are saying that Cubans versus African Americans, but if you really want to break it down, there is a level of Afro-Cubans, and there's so many things. The percentage of people of African descent in the Cuban population is enormous. So you really can't.
Just
look
like
at
Brazil. Brazil has got a lot of black people too.
Just like Brazil, 61% of 60, just over 60% of Cuba, it was white, and was a 26, almost 30% was Metizimo. Do you know what that means? Metizimo? Do you know what that means?
I do. It's a mixed
race.
blood. Yeah.
Mixed
yeah.
race. And 10%, almost 10% was black. So, you really, so if you go down to Florida where I lived, I lived in just outside of Sarasota, these figures are not just based upon race, because, a lot of these people consider themselves Cuban. But, it's more based upon self-identification rather than the context of race. So, internalized racism, as we said in America, doesn't exist in a lot of places in the world, and there is an entrenched stigma around race that people like Charlie Kirk, the mega society, the mega culture, and they perpetuate these things and they make them something that they're not. And I want to be fair to them, because these assessments started before them. But when you listen to a dialogue such as what we're hearing here, it's a very narrow-minded perspective, and it doesn't really look at the globalness of what the argument is.
But
Around.
let me bring to the table the fact that I was married for 43 years to a black man.
Mhm.
So I indirectly, because of him being black, I faced indirect racism. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
things that if something affected him, it indirectly affected me.
Mhm. I Go
So,
right ahead.
uh, so I know that racism exists because I know that I would be treated differently in different places.
Right. Right. Well, one thing that I would like to say is, like I said, when we're seeing the normalization of all of this racism and this discrimination, but now you have a climate that mixes these theories with misinformation. It becomes a dangerous component, and it leads to what we're seeing. It leads to the level of extremism, right? We see these things
Mhm.
being heightened and promulgated. So we're going to go back, but let's get some comments out the way, Beth. And like I said, to feel free to just hang on in there with me, okay?
I'm hanging in there.
Okay, all right.
I'm
Just
hanging
rem-
in there.
just remember, y'all, smash your likes. Thank you, status. Thank you, status. Smash your likes. And yeah, if you're just joining us, we are actively talking about the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. And, we're talking about his legacy in American history. And, I don't want to be unsensitive to, the assassination or the loss of life of an individual such as Charlie Kirk. But I also want to say that, we have to discuss these things in entirety as much as we can and try to move away from bias, and that's really what I feel has to be done. I do wanna say to the family of Charlie Kirk, his wife, and his extended family members, we definitely wish, we pray for you guys, and we definitely hope that you have support in this moment of need. And I think that, for everything that a leader is to a community or a segment of the community, that he was someone who many people knew the name of Charlie Kirk. So we wish the family the best in their time of mourning. And I don't want to take for granted that, this was a human life. So we always want to put that at the forefront of what we do. What would you say to that, Beth?
That's correct. And he that was a life, and his life should be honored. The thing that I want to say to America is this: give you when you deal with a black person, deal with them in a fair way. Sometimes you have to set your biases aside because that could be as far as employment, it could be its education, or renting an apartment or something like that. Put your biases aside and deal with that person individually. And as we grow as a country, we need to put those things aside. Look at each person individually.
Mhm. So when I was a journalist for the Huffington Post, I'm going to see if I can share that article with the community, with our community, because I think it's warranted. And listen, I don't want to just segregate our conversation to just the African American community, because again,
No.
there is a moment right now that we're seeing that is feeling the flames of racism in America. President Donald Trump in the mega movement, and and there's not it's not a two-way street. I mean, we do see problems from a political standpoint when things become overly political. But just go back to the bloody demonstrations in Charlottesville, Virginia, Beth, and everyone else. And what about the intense pressure that night that young lady was murdered by the neo-Nazi extremists? And then what did Trump say? What did Trump say? That there's good people on both sides of it.
Oh
And
no, oh no,
and
no, no.
you cannot. Trump's comments were soft pedaled, right? And it caused many of his opponents, we people requested when he made those statements to forcibly condemn the white supremacists who gathered for that rally. And
Well,
effectively all good. A fact that lack of response, let me finish this, is considered a missed opportunity from a president of the United States of America in the face of a tragedy when a car plowed into a crowd of people in peaceful protests. And at a white nationalist rally in which a white supremacist did kill a young lady and they took a life, but there's good people on all sides, and this is what we're dealing with right now. These are the things that we're discussing that set the stage for what we're dealing with now. Even murder of Charlie Kirk. I'll yield. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a bad thing. It's sad. So it's a sad thing what happened to him. But
Yeah.
but I think that what I would say to the mega people is maybe you've gone a little bit too far to the right.
Yeah.
Is that okay to say
Let's
that?
look at some of the no, you're feel free to speak your opinion. Status agreed with you, Beth, that is an assignable point of view, and an assailable point of view, excuse me.
That I can say that. And
I
like
appreciate well.
my son my
Mhm.
adult son has noticed there's a lot of tension going on. And he
Yeah.
he said some,
Yeah.
privately he says some harsh words. So I don't really want to say, the I don't really want to say what he has said, but there's a lot of tension out
Mhm.
there. Yeah.
Right.
And so I'm being careful with what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
I'm definitely inclined to agree. Give me one. Yeah. Here's the thing, okay, if you can hear me, it definitely is a complex subject. It definitely is a
Right.
powder keg subject. So we have to be able to
It
deal
is.
with these things, strategically. We have to be able to have a strategy for addressing the climate of hate. And definitely, we can't be afraid to speak out against the hate, to actively challenge hate speech, bigoted remarks, no matter where they come from, whenever you encounter them. This shows solidarity with targeted groups. Like I said, the ICE issue in America is definitely an issue. Do you see the Hispanic and Latino community and some of these other communities? Because here's the thing: it's not just Hispanic and Latino people, but you have Haitian, you have African people. You have, what about the
Right.
Korean, the South Koreans who basically were working in a Hyundai facility in I believe it was in Georgia. And they basically were all arrested and held in jail cells for 2 to 3 days. I don't know if you heard about that issue.
I
And it
heard
made
that one. Yeah.
and that was this past week. So again, we have to be able to demand that these situations that are happening, we have to be able to demand fairness, fundamental fairness, and also encourage the leadership to stand on the side of righteousness. We have to encourage accountability and demand that when you are justifying these incidents and using your platform, are you really using it to uplift the Constitution? Are you really dismantling the Constitution? And I would say what's happening in America right now is the Constitution of the United States of America, in theory, is being dismantled more so than it ever has in American history. You know what I
One
mean?
of the issues in our country is restaurants have a lot of workers who may be documented. They may not be
Mhm,
documented. This is a real issue in the restaurant industry. And I know that I've heard through the grapevine they're not real happy about the fact that ICE could come into a restaurant and
mhm,
just pull people out of there because
mhm,
those are hardworking people.
mhm.
That's just one thing, and then I know a lady, she is, Latino, and she's keeping her passport in her purse because she knows of people in Texas that have been rounded up and sent to Mexico.
Right, right. Well,
So it is an issue with the ICE situation, and it's affecting people at the ground level.
mhm,
Um, this country was founded for the principles of freedom, freedom of religion and freedom of speech and freedom together. But what we need some balance with all of this. Yes, there are people that came over the border that were criminals, but they are also rounding up people that are good citizens and sending them to Mexico.
mhm. I agree. I
And this
agree.
is not a good
You know,
thing.
so here's my thing to you, and we're gonna go and take some more comments, but I just want to go to the video of Charlie Kirk's wife, and like I said, you can hang out as long as you want. You're welcome to. So,
I'm right here.
okay, all right, that will work. Let's go ahead and hear from her because I think it's fair. Bear with me one second while we go ahead and.
World is filled with evil, but our God, you guys, our God is so good.
Speaking publicly for the first time since the assassination of her husband, Erica Kirk stood last night by the very desk where the Turning Point USA founder would record his show, referring to him as a martyr.
The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife. The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry.
With crowds gathered outside, Kirk promised to press on with the nationwide college tour, along with the Charlie Kirk radio program and podcast.
The movement my husband built will not die. It won't. I refuse to let that happen. No one will ever forget my husband's name, and I will make sure of it.
Sharing her grief, she posted these images by her late husband's casket. Amid the mourning, authorities in Utah deepening their investigation into Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old they believe fired the single fatal shot at Utah Valley University, killing Kirk.
So, with that being said, I want to go ahead and take some more comments, and then I want to talk a little bit about not just Charlie Kirk, but Turning Point USA. So, people on the right, did we see this status this comment? But I think it's worthy. If we did, I want to go down through it again. People on the right may say that the hard left and their leftists have gone way over the pale of extremism, carefully as I can state. Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think that what happens now is status, and folks, things are becoming overly political. And what we need a break from the political, but we need to be about community. I mean, and really to raise your point right now, the Block Club president might be able to do something more than the president of the United States can for you. I'm just saying, it's definitely a debatable argument, and thank you, Status and Ramona, for sharing your comments too. And Status, the broadcast channel, Amir Shakur Speaks broadcast channel on the assault of USC. Right on. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we showed that, and the other thing too, just like you're saying, Steps, ICE is sending illegal immigrants to their respective countries under the law and within the law on the books of either misdemeanors or felonies committed. And there is the level of there's the level of that exists. No, we can't not disquote that. But let's go ahead and take your next statement and then I'll respond. Remember, every illegal immigrant that made the decision to cross our border has begun their journey to America with at least one crime. I don't know that to be the case status, and I'm not disputing you, but there's women and children. What about the women and children who were separated from their families and who just want to come here and have a better life? You got to remember that America was founded on the basis of immigration. When back in the early history of America, and it wasn't even the early history of America. It's within the last century when Ellis Island was just almost like an international airport. But people were coming by ships to experience the American dream. What they say was the American dream, if it's real to you or not. So, I mean, I just want to illuminate that everyone who came across the border was not a criminal. Was there a lot of criminality? Yes, but there's not one piece of proof that everybody had come, just out of fairness. And for me, I am for the point of removing folks who are illegals. But the only reason why I want to even promote that is promoting the narrative is because we got to combat misinformation by providing factual and nuanced information, and that's really what I'm trying to do. So not the fact of the criminality, but how criminality leads to how people can be assassinated and justified by extremists. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a level of extremism that's being encouraged, many of us believe. How do you feel about that, Beth?
That's concerning. That we need to deal with that because that's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, yeah. And the lowered sense of belonging. I mean, look at the discrimination that's taking place with DEI. DEI and the anti-woke campaigns, to whereas affirmative action campaigns. Now, you may not be a person who sees value in DEI or affirmative action, but think about Jim Crow America when racial hate was the rule of order. And you can literally, kill an African American and a lot of times these things went unchecked. What I'm talking about being lynched, I'm talking about these things. So we have to be able to think about the bigotedness of our society and historically where we came from. And that's why a lot of these programs were even started. They were started in racial America, a racialized America of the past, Jim Crow America. And they were made to equalize when a lot of times when people didn't have the advantage, they were made to equalize advantage. And it was acceptable. Yeah, sure. Ideally, people should be able to move up through the ranks of their job. I did. I came from a high school dropout to being a regional director of a corporation, and I ran 10 stores. I was a corporate executive who ran locations as an asset protection investigator on the district and regional level. I mean, and this is somebody who was a high school dropout. Did I later get my degree? Yes, I have multiple degrees. But what I'm saying to you guys is that, drive and determination was something that I did because I was self-accountable, but everybody doesn't have that lack of raiment. They're not proficient at game as I am. Do you understand what I'm saying, Beth?
Yes, I do. And I guess I should say this. I drive Uber, so I drive all over the South Side. So I see the South Side. And one of the things that is biggest on my heart is getting the young Black men where they're going safely, because that is a big issue for them because their safety is very much at risk. Their lives are not going very well. I'm very concerned about them. So many of them, like they have a part-time job. They're not very educated. They're just not doing very well. And those are people are our future. And then when they do have a job, they have to get out of the Uber. They have to like almost run to the house. They can't be outside. They can't go anywhere. The South Side is just like, it's like they're under siege. It's just not a safe, normal situation. The South Side is not doing very well. The South Side is not doing well at all. The racism and the covert racism has affected the South Side, and the poverty is entrenched, and the young Black men are not doing very well. It's something to pray about, and I'm very concerned about them.
Right. So let me say something, Beth, and then we're going to go back to the comments. And I appreciate you guys for hanging in with us as we are talking about Charlie Kirk and the unfortunate assassination of Charlie Kirk. And the question is that was he the leader in America and the leader that America deserves or that America needs? And what do we do with the mindset of folks like Charlie Kirk or Rush Limbaugh or I mean, I think you can name some others. Let's go to just take some comments and then I'm going to go to another video. Remember, every illegal immigrant that made the decision across the border has begun their journey. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. We definitely talked about that. I apologize, status. Illegal immigration has been bastardized by illegal immigration in recent years. Yes, I think it has been bastardized by a lot of misrepresentation of what it is, what it's supposed to be. And, it's been bastardized by just politicals. When things become overly political, that's when we have issues. I've expressed my point on criminality and chose not to divert to the DEI issue. I do appreciate your discussion. Yeah, no, I appreciate you as well. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are involved in these and breaking it down. But Beth, this one is for you. You are courageous for doing the Uber gig in your region, Beth. I guess he's saying in Chicago. So that's
Yeah.
that's a statement for you.
Yeah, for me, then I guess when I look at it fairly, then some of these young Black men who do have potential, if DEI is used appropriately, then they can do better in life wherever that they are, whether it's at work or school or whatever.
Yeah,
and they are very much affected by the poverty of their mothers. A lot of them have mothers who are in poverty, and that affects them.
And
it affects their lives.
And for
because it just for going to school or getting help to get clothes to go to school or just transportation. So many of them don't have a driver's license, and they cannot. It's a problem. And so you have on the other side of life, you have people that don't really understand what's happening here in Chicago, who are talking, from a platform, trying to tell people about talking to a young Black man. He doesn't even understand what's really happening.
Well, I'm a proponent of everything that you're saying, and I don't not disagree. I mean, I don't.
You don't just. I know you don't. I know you do not disagree with what I'm saying, and I'm boldly telling the truth today.
So let me just state this. We have to be able to look at, where we're at in America in August and September of 2025, and we are looking at a post-racialized America, to whereas a third of the America now is of color, and you are seeing the browning of America. As a matter of fact, the census statistics show that America is turning brown, and the majority of from a racial or a racial geographic is Latino and Hispanic America has grown tremendously and will continue to grow into the next 10 years and more. So my thing to you is that we have to be able to not talk from just even like a Black perspective, but we have to be able to talk from an urban America perspective, because that's the way that I tend to look at things. And good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, you don't have to agree with me if you don't want to. But, again, if we are not encouraging the accountability and promoting dialogue and building encouragement with facts, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. Do you understand what I mean?
Right. The country is getting more brown, and that has to do with Latinos and Asians and Blacks.
And that's why we're discussing urban America, because it's not just, these are not, America right now is inundated with, this age of this post-civil rights America. I mean, you have the ICE issues with ICE enforcement, and that's happening in a number of our communities across the country. It's a major issue in America. So, I mean, when it's saying, what I'm saying is, we have to talk about, there are issues that are pertinent to the Black community, just as well as there are issues that are pertinent to the white community as well. And there are issues that are pertinent to the Latino community. So we got to think in terms of, what's happening in urban society versus, any other societies. And, the big city of New York, some of the cities in that state. I don't mean New York City. I mean New York State and some of its cities, the Bronx, some of these communities, Harlem, or if you go to California, you're going to Compton or South Central Los Angeles, or, you're going to Watts, or if you're going to Texas, maybe you're going down to Dallas and some of the, the poor suburbs down there. This is urban America, and we have to think about how we put control mechanisms in order to help folks deal and cope with what it is. And because we don't have these, we're not willing to have those conversations, or we deal with them in a negative sense, I just think it's a huge mistake. You understand? Do you know what I mean? You don't have to agree.
I know exactly what you mean. And so, yes, I grew up in Griffith, Indiana, and the next town to us was Gary, Indiana. So as I grew up, I saw the contrast of racism with Blacks coming into the community, sometimes not being accepted, sometimes not being allowed into stores, racist comments with people that I grew up with. And so then I went on to marry a Black man because I'm not racist.
I wanna show another segment of Charlie Kirk, and then I just want to talk about a little bit more about his political standpoint. But I just want to. This is another segment, and what happens with Charlie Kirk is when he visited the campuses. This is what he became known for. He started discussing. He started having dialogue and debates with folks who were outside of his political opinion. So basically, he would debate with the Black students, or he would debate with other students who basically disagreed with his opinion, and that's one of the things that he became known for. So let's look at a little bit about this and share this. Give me 1 second.
Come on, Charlie. Everybody good? That's good. Okay, I got my phone out. That's cool for you? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna quote you real quick. You said, if I see a Black pilot, I'm gonna be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Are you gonna do that?
Yeah, I mean that is correct. Yeah.
That's correct. Okay, so can we both agree?
What was the context of what I said though?
What was the context? I don't even want to get into DEI because your opinion on DEI, it doesn't really help it in this case. So, if the context between what you brought up was that you believe that
because they were being hired because they were Black.
Okay, so can we both agree that every single pilot, whether Black, white, whoever, has to go through FAA certification?
No, actually,
we can't.
New lawsuit shows that Black pilots and female pilots have the standards being relaxed.
No,
for them.
sir. Can we agree at the time of February 29th or 2023 when you said it at the time? No.
No, actually, I said it. That's why you don't know the context. Is that new lawsuits were showing that they were relaxing the standards for air traffic control and pilots in order to meet the standards.
The context of that was diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does that have to do with hiring?
Everything. DEI definitionally is that we will hire more of a race versus a different race. So, for example, United Airlines said that they want 50% of their new pilots to either be women or black. Okay. Currently, just so you understand, it's like 8%. So they want to go from 8% to 50%. Okay. And every time DEI is implemented, every single time, the lowering of standards occurs. Every single time.
Lowering of standards?
Correct. So can I prove it to you? We both want excellence, right?
Okay.
If you and I said, hey, we want 50% of the new people going in the NBA are white.
Okay.
Would the NBA drop in its standard?
No. The National Basketball League?
No, if we said 50%, if we say
if 50% of the NBA dropped and it was only white.
No, I
you're
said,
saying would the standard go down?
I'm not hearing what I'm saying. If 50% of all new people going in the NBA were white, by decree, would the quality of play of the NBA decrease?
Would the quality of play in the NBA decrease?
Yeah.
No, if they're the same standard of basketball play.
Hold on, let's talk realistic.
Well, what are you saying realistically? You're asking me if
75% of the NBA is black. 75%.
So does that mean white players are less better, or does that mean
whites are not as good at basketball as blacks?
Okay.
I mean, we got some big.
Everybody, calm down.
We got some big exceptions. I mean, we're very proud of Larry Bird. Okay.
No, he's good. He's good.
We're very proud of Luka and Nikola. However, the point being, let's implement DEI in the NBA. Okay. If all of a sudden 50% of all the players have to be white, which means they have to say no to otherwise good black players.
There was a time where this happened, right?
Well, no, I of course, and the league wasn't as good. That's the point.
No, you understand that there was a time where the exclusion of African American players was in the NBA, right?
No, for sure. I acknowledge that.
I think Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Thank you. I'm sorry. I apologize. So, what I will say is that the climate of hate that Kirk started, basically just to really get to the point, was he the American hero that a lot of people feel? Well, yes, to a small segment of society, he is a hero. Does everybody believe that Charlie Kirk is a hero? No. Does everybody believe that Charlie Kirk is the hero that America deserves? At this point in time, our communities are filled with a climate of hate, with disinformation, with community wide fear, with a lowered sense of belonging, with discrimination and hate, creating obstacles to forming meaningful connections. Do we think that there's erosion of a trust in America? Yes, we do. Is there a climate that damages social interaction and erodes trust in between the different groups as well as public institutions such as law enforcement? Is that happening and engaging now? I think we all can agree that that's happening now. And if there's anybody that disagrees, please feel free to say so. I think that some of the key characteristics that lead rise to people like Charlie Kirk is huge, and I don't know if you guys heard me. I think the platform actually my sound went out, but I will say that it's not even just a matter of discrimination or racial hate. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories and misinformation, like we talked about. Kirk said that the COVID-19 pandemic was started by the World Health Organization. Do we know that to be the case? I mean, there's so many different theories out there, and we have to be able to see things for what they are. Kirk said that the George Floyd murder was a hoax, another hoax. And again, we have to be able to look at the level of disinformation and see it for what it really is. And you guys may disagree with what I'm saying, but the Rush Limbaughs of the world, the Alex Jones of the world, when we are seeing this level of misinformation, and there's a segment of the society that follows these people, we have to be able to have voices of accountability and give platform to voices of reason and logic, and what I would suggest that we definitely look at the situation for what it is. I'm going to go back to the comments, and I believe this is Ramona. I believe this is a comment that you wanted answered. Some people have become insensitive to violence and hatred. Has it become accepted? Why is that? Yes, I think that it has become. I think it has become insensitive. Okay. Violence and hatred, because of the climate of hate and the excitement by leaders, political leaders, and public leaders, can contribute to this climate. They are amplifying it. They are promoting these conspiracy theories. They're making these inflammatory remarks, even some of the media figures. And this has often been the case throughout history, but we see it increasingly now. So let's go to some of the comments. Is it still okay to kill a person because of their views? So it's okay to kill a person because of their view, and it's so sad. Yes, it is sad. It is tragic. Ramona, hopefully I answered your question. If not, please repost it. Other comments, and thank you guys for joining, and I appreciate you. I definitely wanna get to. I definitely want to get to where we're at right now with my opinion and my editorial opinion on Charlie Kirk, and just to answer. So hopefully I answered your question, Ramona. If not, please go back and post it. And I'm sorry about the technical difficulties, you guys. But Kirk, another thing, the Israeli situation that happened in Israel, and Kirk was supportive of Israel. He told an audience of very pro-Israel. My whole life, I have defended Israel. In August of 2025, he said that I have a bulletproof resume showing my defense of Israel. I believe that the scriptural land rights given to Israel is true and correct. I believe in the fulfillment of prophecy. And Kirk is, in that respect, is like a lot of the evangelical movement who will stand by Israel, whether right or wrong. And for me, I believe, just to speak truth to power, you know, the Israeli government has propagated genocide. They have conducted genocide, and you know, the Zionist movement has been wrong in a lot of things. So, I'm not somebody who is very in depth with the Israeli versus Palestinian, but there's clearly a contrast, and there's clearly things that are being done wrong on both sides of the fence. And just because the Israelis are scripturally, they're calling themselves the chosen ones, or that prophecy will be fulfilled by the children of Israel. There's so many misconceived notions about that we would probably need a whole another 2 hours to get into. Do I stand on the side of righteousness and human rights? Yes, I do. When I see children dying, when I see people dying for different reasons, and these type of arguments have to go because we need people to speak from a human rights standpoint, a humanistic standpoint, rather than the standpoint of what they believe to be a twisted truth, targeting of any minority groups, marginalized communities based upon race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity is straight wrong. We cannot have it. And those who propagate it, those who do that, are wrong. And I appreciate, the folks who have stood. So here's what I want to do. I want to address how I feel about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was murdered this week by an assassin's bullet. And do I agree with the assassination? No, I don't agree with the assassination, but what I will do is I will play a video that best responds to how I feel about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So let's share that.
Malcolm X, you were involved in a controversy some months ago with your leader. Is that over?
Well, I've been silent for the past 90 days because of some statements I made concerning the President of the United States, which were distorted.
They were distorted?
And yes.
What did you say, Malcolm?
Well, I said the same thing that everybody says, that his assassination was the result of the climate of hate. But only I said the chickens came home to roost, and which means the same thing. Climate of hate means that this is the result of something. And when I said chickens coming home to roost, I said the same thing.
But you did not say that you were glad the president was killed.
No, that's what the press said. What would I look like saying that I'm glad the president was killed?
Malcolm, this is your first public statement in that 90-day period, is it not?
First time I opened up my mouth in 90 days. That's why I'm talking so fast and so hearty.
You feel, however, that we're making progress?
No. I will never say that progress is being made. Knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. You pull it all the way out, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that's the blow made. And they haven't even begun to pull the knife out, much less try and heal the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there.
You haven't.
So where are we at? So in a modern society, and all of the issues that we have going on, yeah, I do believe that the assassination of Charlie Kirk is a case of the chickens coming home to roost. And was it a bad statement that was made? No, I believe it's a truthful statement, meaning that the unpleasant consequences of one's actions can eventually can catch up with them. Almost, past actions have consequences. There's a philosophy or a poet of not a statement, but a philosophy, and I love it. And it says, everything that we do echoes in eternity. So I say that to say past actions have consequences. We have to be able to think about the images, the things that we say, especially when we are influencers. And the impact can do damage in our community for years. You know, the political statements that are made can do damage to our community for years. When you're going down to colleges and you're talking to young college students and you are giving them a narrative that heightens racial discrimination, or that heightens, you know, anti-woke philosophy or anti-DEI, which again, going back, is racial discrimination, or you heighten conspiracy theory, and this is something that pretty much has become your platform. It's neglect. It's neglect of the community. It's neglect of your constituents. It's neglect of the students. And come election time, I think that the climate, like I said, the climate of hate harbors more hate. So we have to be able to stop these things. We have to be able to stop them in full effect. Some people said it's karma. Thank you for that, Ramona. Karma. Some people say it's the disease that you have sown. Some people say that the chickens coming home to roost is normalized bias because everybody's doing it. But just remember, unchecked prejudice becomes socially acceptable when we allow it. And the biases against certain groups, certain segments of society, certain people should not be tolerated. It shouldn't be encouraged, because what you create is a us versus them mentality. And this is what Charlie Kirk's platform was built upon. So I will say this: nobody deserves to be targeted. Not Charlie Kirk, not anyone else, not Donald Trump. Do they have a very extremist standpoint of view? Yes. Do I believe that to the level of some of these folks are fascist, and fascism is a plague in our society? The fear, the insecurity, the economic anxiety that they try to promote. We got to be able to dispel these things and call them out for what it really is. So unfortunately, another person's life was lost. Hopefully we can take this person's life and we can learn from what he wasn't or what he was, and maybe we can look at things from a resolutionary standpoint, or a reactive standpoint, or proactive standpoint. I'm sorry, I should say proactive standpoint. And how can we look at some of the statements that he made? I believe in were spot on. I believe that personal accountability has to happen as well. I believe that dependent upon the government, it's not a thing that we need to do. We need to get away from that. So how do we contribute to promoting community? How do we contribute to making people economically independent? These are the things that some of the better things that we can take from the legacy of people like Charlie Kirk. But targeting of minority groups, disenfranchising people, talking to students as if the lack of understanding. I mean, a 19, 20-year-old will not have the level of understanding of somebody who has the experience of going out in society and having to deal with society. I mean, while the students are educated, the students are smart, but studies have found that hate groups go to these campuses and they talk to the students, or they recruit from these different campuses because the mindset is right, and they can train and promote and shape the mindset of these people into what they want them to become. So don't forget that, and remember that, and absolutely, it is a monster that has grown with our society. So I'm just going to leave you with this statement. And I would say that, after the many years of doing these things, I think that, we can really say without a doubt that, whatever this person did or decided to do when he decided to take someone's life, that's wrong. And we can't justify that with being politically disagreeable. But we have to learn how to disagree without being violently disagreeable and allow, discourse to be a level of, we have to walk away and allow ourselves to be able to learn from others and others' experience. Political discourse, again, should never become violent. So with that being said, I will say one more thing is that, going back to the climate of hate, I will say this. We have to promote dialogue. We have to learn how to build coalitions. We have to encourage communities to come together through interfaith councils. Us versus them won't work. We have to encourage dialogue. We have to look at diversifying our coalitions. If a racial geographic is not represented in my group, I want that racial geographic represented in my group. And that adds to the value of the group, and then it promotes accountability, because not only do you have a diverse mindset, but you have other people's voices and cultural experiences. So the worst thing that could have happened within the last 20 years was to remove cultural training, or in the CRT movement is definitely something that's a problem. So that has to be corrected in the days ahead. And again, the narratives of folks like Alex Jones and folks like the late Rush Limbaugh and folks like the late Charlie Kirk, these things have to be met with fact-finding accountability. And that's the only way that we'll be able to understand these things, these people better. And, the rise of extremism in this day and age, it's going to end. It's going to end. What we will be dealing with in 10 years from now, I'm not sure. But I can probably say that we'll look back on this day in awe, and we'll say, you know what, I don't know why we allowed these things to happen. So that's all I have to say. Listen, I appreciate you guys for joining. I appreciate you guys for giving your input. And, I'm going to leave this, and I'm going to say that, Charlie Kirk, for what he was and what he wasn't, he was a voice for a segment of the community. So, may he rest in peace. Thank y'all for joining. Please post a like, and share the stream. And, I'll see you guys again next time. Take care.